Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and it is Monday morning of the week that we have off from school, our normal day jobs. We actually have the whole week off this week for the Thanksgiving holiday, and that's why we were not here on Sunday, because we were celebrating Thanksgiving with my side of the family out at my mom and dad's house.
Yeah, we probably could have done it last night, but by the time everybody got here, we were so stuffed with food, and it wouldn't have been good.
Yes, all of the kids were here,
Yes.
and we got to sit on the front porch. It was a beautiful day, so we enjoyed time with family yesterday. So this morning, since we have the week off, we are going to talk about artificial intelligence, and I do have a cup of coffee in my hand, so it is all good, even though it is fairly early. You actually told me in the kitchen just a little while ago, you're like, all right, go ahead, fix your cup of coffee, and then I'm going to start talking. And I was like,
I listened to a guy named Network Chuck, and he actually sells coffee.
I've been thinking about buying some of
That's
that.
what I'm thinking. Maybe you should get your own coffee line too.
Well, right now, the coffee that I'm drinking is from Paris.
Oh, it is?
It is. Our oldest son and his wife went on a delayed honeymoon to Paris. They just got back on like really, really late, like 3:00 in the morning on Sunday morning.
Yes.
So, and they brought coffee beans from Paris. And so I ground some coffee this morning. I used my new espresso machine that I got for my birthday.
How is it?
And it's good.
Good coffee.
It's good coffee.
Paris coffee.
Yes, they
Got it.
did good.
So today I started a little earlier, and then I stopped, and I said, okay, get your coffee, and then we'll talk.
And then we're
And-
in the living room talking. And I'm like, Jim, why are we in the living room talking about all this AI stuff when we have a podcast and we're supposed to be talking about AI stuff on our podcast? So here we are. We're going to cover some headlines.
Yeah, it's all, even the headlines, though, to me this time are all about headwinds.
Explain what a headwind is.
We're starting to approach the end of the year, which
Okay.
means we're going to start reflecting more about where we are.
Hey, we're
And
going into our third year.
This will be our third year, and we're going to change some stuff up, which we'll talk about toward the end, but we are going to change a few things up. Headwinds are basically resistance, and we can all list them. There's resistance to change. There's resistance to something new. There's, pick your term. But headwinds specifically against AI in general, and we tend to focus heavily on education, but the headwinds against AI in general tend to be, right now, a lot of it has to do with data. There's a huge fight over data. One of our headlines is the AI lab waging guerrilla war over exploitive AI. Now, when you look at this particular headline, what's interesting about it is it's from the MIT Technology Review, and this is some tools we talked about a long time ago, and they basically allow you to poison your artwork or whatever it is, to where if an AI tries to use it, then it poisons the data set.
So it's like a virus.
Well, they're not going to call it a virus because that's a dangerous word.
But is it not like a virus?
It's similar to that. Maybe a poison pill would be a better analogy, because a virus will spread, whereas this is not supposed. I guess it's kind of spreading, but what they're doing is adding what they call barely perceptible permutations to the pixels that screw up the machine learning algorithm. They're talking about the two tools they mentioned. One was called Glaze and one's called Nightshade.
It's a way for an artist to do something in their art and then say, okay, it's my art, it's human made. And if an AI tries to train on my piece of art, it's not going to be able to, because I have poisoned my art for AI.
Yeah, they literally say they're adding an invisible layer of poison to the images. You know what it reminds me of? Those watermark things that they used to put in copy. Oh, you did it on you were a photographer.
I was a photographer, and when you paid me a certain amount of money, and it was only supposed to get you your proofs. And when I first started doing it, I didn't really worry about the fact that people would take those images and copy them or take pictures of them or anything like that, because it's like, okay, they're going to do that. They're going to hang it on their wall. No big deal. But then I had somebody who was running for a political campaign that I did their family photos. And then all of a sudden I saw the image that I did of their family on all of their political advertising.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait a second, they only paid me a $75 sitting fee, and now they're using this image for their political campaign.
That's actually very similar to the problem they're talking about with these.
And so I was like, so I reached out to them and said, hey, as per our contract, you were supposed to have to purchase the use of that image. It was, above and beyond the sitting fee. And they kind of fought me on it a little bit. I ended up winning because I don't think they wanted to be embarrassed about it. It was a small political, I think they were running for mayor or something like that. But then I realized I had to start putting the copywritten image watermark on the tops or over every one of my images so that didn't happen again.
And you finding that, though, was easier then, because when you think about AI, it's not going to recreate your image, which is how you spotted it.
Right.
It uses it as training material to then create similar images. And that's how they're getting around this idea of even that's the battle they're fighting. The battle they're fighting is, you're using my image for training, and they're saying, but I don't use your image to generate the output product. The output product is independent. Anyway, this is a headwind.
The thing that I'd like to mention is I'd like to bring in the Austin AI Alliance real quick. We have a group of people that are members of the Austin AI Alliance that they are actually doing an AI film festival in Austin, that it's a whole new group of artists that are specifically using artificial intelligence to do movies, which I think that's awesome. And so I think that AI is actually also just opening up a whole new realm of art possibilities for people who are not as creative in a traditional fashion as...
I would say we're just not as skilled. I'm one of those people that
I have all these ideas in my head.
I have all these ideas, and I'm not skilled enough to pull that idea out. Yeah. And I can't afford or couldn't find an artist that I could go find to do that. I do think there's a balance. I think that I've mentioned this as a headwind against AI specifically because the poison pill technique sounds like a good first solution, kind of like watermarking. I don't know how well it's going to work in the long term because it may be easy for them to figure out how to remove it. But it does have a conversation that you and I talk about this all the time. What it brings in is a conversation, because the argument that you should just be more creative, human creativity is not something that you can do on this arbitrary timeline. The argument is, well, you created this piece of art, you've sold this piece of art, they're using it for training, but who cares because you're on to your next piece of art. That's not how human creativity works. It's a slower process.
And artists, when they create a piece of art, it's almost like it's a piece of themselves.
If it's good art, it is.
It's good art. It's truly an expression of their feeling.
Something they're feeling at the time, something they're going through. It's a way of personifying human emotion, experience, and emotion. Headwind number one, data. Okay. There is a lack of it. And these silos that are creating, like people selling access to data. This has caused a whole bunch of different conversations because, like Reddit, which is one of those places where all this information these people have put on there for free, and they're now selling it to be trained on AI. There's a lot of different conversations. So that's one headwind.
Not always good data.
Well, that's the other thing. There's a lot of bad data. One of the things you and I talked about early on about the headwinds and just data in general was they had only trained it on a very, very small percentage. One qualifier I'm adding to that going forward is they've now trained on a whole, maybe the percentage wise, they haven't really gotten that much more data, but good data, trainable, usable data.
A lot of it's gone.
A lot of that is gone. So when you start saying they've trained on 100% of the data, they haven't trained on 100% of all the data, just 100% of the usable data.
What they consider vetted, good information.
Exactly. So that's a headwind. So when we talk about education in general, what are some of the headwinds? Well, before I get specific on education, let's talk about political headwinds because they affect education.
Yes.
And what is the term? We've used the term several times. I can't think of what it is, but basically when you're putting up barriers using politics to do it and to where you're prevented, there's a term for that. You and I talk about that. Basically, I'm putting up a barrier by adding regulation.
The capture?
Yes.
Regulatory
capture. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So
it's early in the morning, and I still got that.
It's the French coffee.
I'm almost done with my coffee.
It's the French coffee. This next one is the case for targeted regulation. This one is Anthropic. They're the one that make Claude. Amazon is a huge investor in Anthropic. Like they just put another $4 billion into it. I think when Alexa finally comes out.
Hold on. How much did they just put into it?
Another $4 billion.
another $4 billion.
Yeah, they've already put $4 billion in it before. That's chump change.
I know. I just like hearing that number.
I'd like to hear that number applied to what we do, not applied to. But anyway, they're investing because basically that's Amazon's way of getting access, because Microsoft pretty much owns OpenAI.
Yes.
So they need a competing large scale developer. Anthropic is that, which is, like I said, Claude is there. But the point is that I still feel like when they talk about getting these targeted regulation, it's another way for someone to say, I need the government to come in and put up these
regulatory capture,
political barriers, regulatory capture, in order to make sure that I stay on top. I would like to think that
J.D. Vance
said, he did. J.D. Vance was saying, I do not trust the people's
They're not there
motives.
for the benefit of
They're
everybody.
not there for the benefit of everybody. I'm agreeing with him on that. I still agree with him on that, because when you look at, Anthropic, they're big, and they're one of the big ones out there, that people that started it when they left OpenAI to start it. And they are about responsible. And I agree with them on that, in that regard. I just don't necessarily trust their motivations. Headwind number 2, political barriers, regulatory capture. So, and that affects everyone. That's why I mentioned it for education. Headwind number 3, when we talk about education in general, the big one we've seen over and over and over and over again is cheating.
Yes.
We talk about it all the time.
Everyone talks about it.
There's a lot of resistance because of cheating. The one I'm more concerned about is the next headline. AI photos showing girl students with nude bodies. Royal, is that how you say it? Roll private school in Pennsylvania. I've followed this story a little bit more, but basically somebody took some photos of some girls. You talked about this early on. You started a book.
I'm still working on a book.
I need to get the book out.
It's not just a book. It is a book with attached curriculum and lessons specifically for counselors.
And it's very personal to you. There's that whole artistic endeavor. It's somewhat of an artistic endeavor for you.
It's very personal for me.
Because it has personal stories and things.
A long time ago, I had a long time. I'm going to date myself. So a long time ago, you had pictures, and the pictures got developed, and you had to go to the pharmacy or to wherever it is that you were picking up your pictures. And I was working for a company, and I had a roll of film developed, and there were some images of me on that roll of film that some friends of mine had taken, laughing at a slumber party we'd had. And it was me in a towel. I mean, it wasn't anything that was...
Well, you weren't naked.
I wasn't naked. I was in a towel, and my hair was up in a towel, and they were just laughing about it. And I had forgotten that they had done that, because back then you had it, like, you could find a roll of film in a junk drawer.
You needed one of those little ones, Insta ones. That's what you should have
the Polaroid.
You should have had a Polaroid.
But it was just a film camera, and a lady who worked.
And the girls didn't mean anything by it.
We were joking around and laughing, and I had forgotten it was on there. Well, a lady that worked with me was older than I was, and they saw that I had gotten the pictures back, and they decided to open up my sealed envelope and look at my images.
And post them on the bulletin board.
They put them on a bulletin board.
Anyway,
it's in the book.
It's in the book. The point is that one of these headwinds are, when you look at stuff like this, these are called deep fakes. When you look at stuff like what they're doing here, it's a very gray area, because it's technically not child porn.
It's not their body.
Because it's not their body. It's AI generated. But what they're doing, which people have done it photographically years ago, where they take somebody's head and put it on somebody using Photoshop kind of thing. But this is different because they generate the image. I saw one the other day. I was telling you about it, to where you can take a video, not just an image. You can take a video, and I can take it and regenerate the face on the video, where it'll generate the facial expressions and everything that resembles your face on somebody else's body. So this caused a problem, because the school district, because they probably didn't have good policies as to how to deal with these kind of things.
There's not even good laws.
Well, that is the point, is that there isn't good rules. They didn't have good internal policies. And so specifically about reporting. Where does this fall in? We knew if a girl's picture showed up in the nude on somebody's phone and people were sharing it, there's a clear set of rules as to what exactly you're supposed to do with that. But when it's not an actual girl, but it resembles her, or maybe it looks a lot like her, what do you notify the parents? Well, the parents said, yes, you do.
But the school did not.
The school didn't. And this is a private school, and the board president has already stepped down. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I'm sure lawyers are everywhere, and they're talking about suits and all this stuff. It's gray, but it's also a second headwind in education, because now there's a fear of AI that's being caused by these deep fakes. And you and I have been talking about this literally since we started our podcast.
Well, and that's why, funny thing, I am actually a member of the New York Trial Attorneys Association.
I remember that.
So I am in no way an attorney, but I am a member of this Trial Lawyers Association specifically so I can try to keep up with some of the laws concerning deepfakes and children and exploitation of children and what AI is doing with this. And that's one of the things that the book that I'm working on is going to address, because from a counselor perspective, you have to know what to do. Like, do not erase the photos. Do not erase the videos. You do call the local authority, and you also call, additional authorities. And so there's like a step. We're constantly training school districts on a process. The process for cheating, the process for creating prompts, the process for this. It is a process for handling.
I wish more schools were bringing us in.
Maybe we don't advertise enough.
Maybe not, because we've been doing this. We're about to start our third season, third year of our podcast. We have talked about deepfakes.
Schools are slow to adopt.
Which we're going to talk about that in a second.
The summer that we did this, we went out and did just a few schools. The second summer that we did this, because that's when schools do their professional development stuff, is the beginning of the school years. The second time, we traveled to other states within the United States to do it.
It's true. We have expanded.
Next summer,
it feels slow.
But school is slow.
Which we're going to talk about that in a second, because we're going to talk about a different kind of headwind. So headwind in education specifically has to do with fear. It has fear of cheating. It has fear of
psychological effects on students.
Psychological effects on students. So we're talking about three different types of headwinds against AI. And so when you talk about education, unfortunately, education tends to be a slow adopter anyway.
There's reasons for that.
One of the quotes that I read earlier is, think of it like the blood-brain barrier in your head. You've got a barrier in your head that specifically is built to keep things from getting to your brain.
To protect
like viruses, to protect you. The problem is, if something's in there, like, when these people start getting tumors and stuff like that, they also have a very difficult time treating it because
of the
blood-brain barrier. Education has these barriers for good reason, to keep things from getting in that haven't been properly vetted or whatever.
It's a very large machine. It's a very large moving part.
Well, there's a lot of kids.
If you get something in and it's embedded into the system, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, hang on, we did not want to do that. This was not what we were expecting the outcome would be. It's really hard to pull it back out. Like you said, it's hard to get it out of the system.
Yes, it's a barrier. Unfortunately, when you look at Silicon Valley and the move fast and break things mentality, that doesn't tend to work well, partly because it shouldn't and partly because they don't want it to. But when you look at the process first of what is the overall adoption process typically for technology in general, there's three distinct phases. And the people that are associated with those. There's the early adopters. There's the people that
they're going to jump in. They're gung-ho.
That tends to be me.
That is 100% you.
Then there's the mainstream adopters, which tends to be more you. The mainstream adopters are, as it's gotten more mainstream, I mean, you play with the stuff because I play with the stuff, but when you start utilizing yourself, it tends to move more toward general usage.
Well, production and something that gives me a product, and
it's more stable because you don't want to fiddle with it.
Right.
You break technology enough without getting technology
I'm
that's
really
easy
good
to
at
break.
that. But yeah, I don't want to go up a learning curve just to go up a learning curve. You want to go up the learning curve because you like learning new things. I want to go up a learning curve because I want to get to an area to where I have the output that I'm looking for.
It's useful. Late adopters, which tends to be where education in general is, late adopters are the ones that they don't like change. They hate the idea of change. They don't want to deal with it. They've got enough going on. Pick whatever
they
the reason
want to let
is.
everybody else test the waters.
Right. The late adopters, which is the ones that most Silicon Valley people don't like. The biggest margins in
money,
in technology, the biggest margins and most money are you can charge more in that early stages.
Well,
they love the early adopter people.
And the stuff gets replaced so fast.
Replace it fast. Think about how much a TV cost. These big screen TVs we all have now. Mm-hmm. Think about how much they cost when they first came out with 4K, 8K TVs, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. They've moved more toward mainstream now. As a matter of fact, they are mainstream, which means the price has gone down, which means the margins aren't as good. They're still good. By late adopters, the margins are terrible. And that's the ones that Silicon Valley hates the most. Manufacturing people love it, because now they've got the process really well defined. This is where you see a lot of stuff in China and in Thailand. They do the best because now they've got mass production lines set up and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So now let's talk about classrooms. How does a classroom work? Well, a classroom there's 3 phases in classrooms. This is what a teacher told me a long time ago. You synthesize information, you deliver information, you assess the learning. Most AI stuff right now is in the synthesize information stage, meaning that you talk about things like Magic School, which is a wrapper around some of these others, or even talking about using ChatGPT in the classroom. You're synthesizing lessons, worksheets, ideas.
It's giving me information.
It's synthesizing information. It's not really focused on delivering information, because that's one of the things we're doing.
That's
what we're working
moving toward the delivery mechanisms, Notebook LM,
yes,
and some of the other things that are
they're trying to move it where you synthesize and deliver it using a similar tool set like Notebook LM from Google, or what Microsoft is trying to do with the control of your PC. Everybody, I told you on the last podcast, trying to do it. Assessments, that's a slippery slope. Everybody wants to do that. You hear about it all the time, but you've got privacy laws and all this other stuff you've got to deal with when you talk about it.
And it's not always right.
Correct.
I found so far, if I take like a key and I give it an image of a key and I say, here is the answer key to what I'm about to give you quiz wise, it has some mistakes. It doesn't always get it right. And so, yes, is it saving me time as a teacher? Absolutely. I'm only having to do a cursory glance to make sure it was right. But
and remember, that is your science and math classes too. The key you're talking about is in science and math. It does better if you ask it to assess a paper that someone wrote.
The writing style, the tone, the grammar. Large language models are based on language.
Exactly. So these things are related. What I'm talking about because we're talking about headwinds, we're talking about all these things being a potential good or bad. But one of the problems with education is these early adopters, these people that are willing to put themselves out there and learn this new stuff, they tend to move around. Maybe they leave education or they move around. Here in our small district, they tend to go to a bigger district because they can get paid more money or whatever. And you lose all of that, because in the industry, you gain from these early adopters.
Let's talk about the makerspace, because that's what happened. We were an early adopter for a makerspace program, a Fab Lab makerspace.
They were originally called Fab Labs. That was the early term because they came out of MIT.
And so we got it board approved. We built a curriculum. We did all of the things, and it was amazing. I spent 7 years of my life in a makerspace doing some freakishly amazing stuff.
They're still amazing. Even by today's standards, they're still amazing.
Well, and it was one of those things that as a teacher, I could see the implication and the impact that I was having on kids' lives.
And then what happened?
Administration changed.
The changes.
And the changes and the turnover rate in education after the first 3 years, it started getting a little more difficult. And after the 5 years, it was a lot more difficult. And then I moved on.
You're the early adopter and you moved on.
And my passion wasn't there. And the next teacher that came in, Sarah DeBoard, amazing teacher. She was awesome. She did everything she could for the next 2 years to keep it going. But
that administrative turnover had made the headwinds had grown.
It was a lot harder for her.
And then she left and went to another district. So yet another early adopter we lost. She went to another district
and the next one got thrown in, didn't know anything about what she was supposed to be doing.
And now that whole program is pretty much gone away.
It is a teacher's workroom now.
I know. So when I talk about headwinds, technology wants to move at a particular pace, and the whole technology industry does with these, better margins, early adopters, mainstream. Who cares about late adopters because we're moving on to the new early adopter for the next thing. We've seen it in all kinds of technology. AI is not any exception to it. We have early adopters now. Your the ladies that are in that's literally what our
The
AI
AI
trailblazers that we've set up. That's what they're for. They're early adopters. We're trying, though, with them to figure out how to make it mainstream to where it doesn't lose just because we lose a teacher.
Well, the problem that I run into, and I know we're starting to run a little low on time, but that's okay. We can go over our 30 minutes if we need to. The problem I have is like the other day I was in one of those classrooms and she has 20 kids in one of her sections. She does 3 sections a day. And she had a brand new student that came in that has difficulties. The whole dynamic of the classroom had changed because of that one student. And I say all the time, teachers are up to their ass in alligators. They still have to deal with the day-to-day grind of the kid under the desk or the kid hitting the other kid or the kid not doing what they're supposed to do or the kid screaming out. You know, there's that day-to-day grind that they're dealing with. And right now, AI helps them during their conference periods. It helps them after hours. I had a husband come up to me the other day that said, hey, I just want to say thank you for showing my wife in that program, AI, because she's actually at home at 4:30 in the afternoons because she's done with her administrative stuff that she's having to do.
First of all, that felt really good.
It felt really good.
Second
He found me to tell me that.
Second of all, the synthesized piece is what she's using.
She's using it for that.
I think you talk about student engagement, which engaging kids that come in that are, even if they're not difficult, they are different. They're at a different learning level. Maybe they speak
different language,
whatever. That deliver information piece, which is what you and I are working on so hard right now. How can AI help with that? Or in other words, not just synthesize it, but deliver it in a very fluid way that allows you to adapt to this new variable that just came into your.
So that's what we're trying to do with Agnes and what we're going to be doing at TCA in February. We're trying to move the school system from the use it to synthesize information up to the middle section, which is the delivery section. Eventually, we're going to add something to Agnes that's going to be helping with the assessment section. But Agnes is a beta, and we are learning as we go, and we're adding as we go. I think
that's why I pilot everything.
I think it's amazing that you pilot everything. We're not trying to take something out of the technology world that's for corporate America and shoehorn it into a classroom for a teacher to use for 6 weeks and then go, well, this freaking doesn't help me, which is what happens. How many times have we gone into a closet and found technology that somebody placed in the school system 10 years ago?
I placed it in there 10 years ago. Because I've been there for almost 20 years and I have found technology, like we had these little tablets we put in, or we had these early adopters. We had bunches of teachers that used them, but we put them into all the classrooms instead of just in a pilot program, which is one of the few times I did that. I found them in closets where the batteries had corroded. Mm-hmm. And it exploded. It exploded because the teacher that originally used it left, and the new one that came in had no desire to use it.
And the clickers,
that was a big thing for a while. Everybody was going to have a clicker. So kids
could pick ABC.
All the kids were going to get a clicker.
Little micro quizzes so they can hurry up.
That was that assessment phase. That was supposed to help with the assessment.
And just all this technology gets shoved into closets, and then I'm having to hire somebody to come get the e-waste from our school district.
I know. And again, that's part of that. How do we adapt the school system and its phases of how it does things to this desire for Silicon Valley to move fast and break things? And the way we're doing it through our pilot is for us to have more control over that AI piece. We put it in there in a way that we have control of. We can put it in the way we want it. We can customize it the way we need to. We can adapt it to the situation as it changes. We can manage the costs.
We can put the users in that we know are going to use it. The other users don't have to have it.
That's correct. Yes. And so it would end up in a closet with a corroded battery. So anyway,
I think the way that we are approaching it and the way that we are going to start showing other districts to approach it is amazing. And I absolutely love the fact that we are not spending, $7,000 a month on a subscription to something.
Yes.
That we are literally spending about $12, $13 a month. Now, we only have 5 teachers that we are allowing to use it right now.
And those are early adopters.
Let's take those 5 teachers and multiply that by the month and say, okay, now we have all 300. That's still not going to be that much
and the
money.
good news is that if a teacher leaves that's one of our early adopters, we just turn the account off and the money is no longer being spent.
Right.
Whereas if we put it in with everybody and got a subscription to an enterprise level subscription to something and everybody had access to it, the next person that comes in may not touch it.
Correct. It's like gym memberships. And yes. I don't blame them. It's a great money-making strategy.
Of course, you amortize the cost across everybody.
I'm tired of corporations making money on education and not thinking about actually investing in education
is an investment. It's investing in the future, and it's not supposed to give you an immediate return like selling a widget does.
The return it's going to give you is that when you're 90 years old, that generation is going to decide what nursing home you get to go in.
We're going to make it to 90.
I'm thinking 100.
Okay. All right. We better wrap up.
That's me. I'm going for 100.
We better wrap up.
So anyway, that's the first time I said that word in this whole podcast. I'm so happy with me because I try not to say that. Anyway, my name is Maurie. I'm here with my husband, Jim. And on Sundays, on Mondays, on Tuesdays, sometimes
we try to get close to Sunday.
Sunday. We sit down and we talk about artificial intelligence. It is Thanksgiving week. We hope that you guys have a marvelous holiday here in the United States, and everyone else, we just hope that y'all have a marvelous rest of the week.